Welcome to Podcast for Fun. This is the show where we dive into the passion, the process, and the journeys of creative storytellers as they bring their stories to life. I'm your host, Sophia, and today we are joined by a talented comic writer, Doug Wagner. Thank you so much for being here, Doug.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me, and it's good to see you so shortly after the show. So it's great seeing you again.
It's good to see you too. I'm excited for this podcast.
Me
So,
too.
let's start with you telling us a little bit about yourself and your career.
Oh, that's not an easy question. Well, I started out. Let's see. Born in Florida, but I was
Mhm.
an Army brat, which means my father was in the military, so like we moved around quite a bit as I was growing up. Um,
Okay.
and so lived all over the South. I currently live in Utah in the mountains where I love it. Um, quick career highlights like I decided at 17 that I wanted to write comic books. And as every 17-year-old, you're pretty bad at writing at that point. So it took several years for me to, get good enough to get a yes. Hundreds
Yeah.
of rejections later, I managed to finally get a yes from someone. And that was with
Mhm.
Malibu Comics back in the day. Um, got some work from them just in time for Marvel to buy them and shut them down. So, so kind of a gut punch when I was younger, and it took me quite a bit longer to kind of get back into the flow of things from that because that was a little bit hard on me.
Mhm.
Then probably about 2003, I decided with another friend, Kevin Gardner, who owns 12 Gauge Comics, so we were just going to do it ourselves. So that was one of those things where it was like I stopped waiting for somebody to give me permission and I just started making comics.
Mhm.
And luckily I've been doing that for 20 years. So, you know, since. So love it. I've been doing image comics for most of that time.
Mhm.
Most recently, I've been doing a lot of dark comedy horror books, which you saw where you're at Emerald City. So
Yeah.
plastic and vinyl and plush. The latest one coming out next month is I Was a Fashion School Serial Killer. And yeah, I mean, I love what I do. I absolutely love it.
Do you remember the first story you wrote when you were 17?
Oh, when I was 17. Now, what's interesting about this, right, is
Huh.
like I was pretty clueless at 17, had no clue what I wanted to do with my life, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Um, didn't realize until I wanted that I wanted to write comics that I had always been a writer. I had been writing stories since I was like 4 or 5 years old. But to me, they were just daydreams, right? Like, I mean,
Mhm.
I'd type out, some of them I'd write out and stuff, but they were just me playing in whatever universe I wanted to play in.
Yeah.
At 17, the first thing I did when I was 17, Cully Hamner, who's been drawing comics for quite some time, he and I actually went to high school together. And so we created our own superhero team. And that's how, we kind of got it started. Back then, we called it Magnum 357. And
Mhm.
about like a superhero team that was kind of like they were the police of superheroes. So it was like a team, and there was one in every city. We had this whole concept built out, and we had these cool characters that we'd come up with. And
Mhm.
they were gonna, they were kind of like low level, as far as superpowers were concerned, more like
Mhm.
on the level, say, of a Captain America. But they were like a super team, and they'd run around, handling bad guys. Just your very typical superhero comic.
Okay. Do you remember like a specific like story you put in there? Was your little police
Oh
superhero
yeah.
team?
Man, it's been so long. Now you're yeah. I mean, for those, it was a lot like probably the main one we were working on at that point is we actually had like a villain team. And so they
Okay.
were trying to stop this villain team that was way overpowered compared to our poor guys. And it basically was just, hey, stop the bad guys from doing bad things. 'Cause, back in those days, superhero comics, that's what they were, right? Spider-Man had to
Yeah.
stop Dr. Octopus and those kind of things. And it was just, they were attacking the city and there was a devious plan to blow up something,
Mhm.
and our guys were going to stop it.
I was expecting something more like horror because your stories right now are completely not superhero
Oh
stories.
yeah.
How did you transition from superhero stories to a serial killer who wants to avenge his blow up doll?
I mean, I think those were always in there. I was just talking to a friend yesterday about this,
Uh-huh.
and what's really interesting is the very first character I ever created. was
Yeah.
when I was about 6 years old, and his name was the Butcher Knife Man. And I know. And so in my head, like he would run around and he'd slice up all the bad guys and stuff. So there was kind of a mix of superhero, but like there was definitely a horror element to that.
Mm-hmm.
I've always liked horror, and but I always liked it more when it was dark comedy and versus the gory stuff. I know that some of my stuff has a lot of blood in it, but usually it's on the ridiculous level, not the
Yeah.
super gory side. And so, I think that was just a natural transition for me.
Uh,
You got to think like for the longest time in America, there was nothing but really superhero comics.
mm-hmm.
So I think that's where I love those. And I thought that's all I could do until eventually, like, I think my mind opened up a little bit and said, hey, there's more to comics than just superheroes. You can write other stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where the sick and deranged and twisted stuff started coming in.
I'm kind of curious. Have you ever watched the latest movie, Substance?
Oh yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
I, I mean, I love the fact that it's a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's not your typical horror, style of film. And those are the ones that appeal to me most. I mean, there's plenty of slasher stuff. And hey, listen, on a good Friday night when I just want to eat popcorn and watch a movie, the old Michael Myers and
Yeah.
Freddy Krueger and those kind of things. But then what I love about horror right now is it's evolving. And
Mm-hmm.
like it's all over like, hey, listen, if you love blood and guts, there's plenty of that stuff out there. But then there's stuff that's becoming more psychological, and that's where substance comes in. And I
Yes.
think you're seeing this evolution there of like really good scary movies, but that they don't have like blood and guts and stabbing and all that kind of stuff. It's just scary here.
Mm-hmm.
And I think those are the ones that I'm most attracted to. Those are the funny ones. Like I love The Babysitter and Tucker and Dale versus Evil, those
Mm-hmm.
Army of Darkness, those kind of movies too. It's like the psychological stuff's definitely more like probably going back, the one that
Uh-huh.
probably influenced me the most was Alien. And that's straight up a psychological horror. Like they
Mm-hmm.
almost have no death in there, you just very little. And so it's just scary, and on a psychological level. So that's what I prefer.
What was the plot of Alien again?
Alien, basically it's like they're out in space and they land on this planet and one of their guys gets infected by an alien that gets loose in this spaceship and they're all just miners, it's just a
Yeah.
mining ship. And so they're like stuck in this huge, like think skyscraper size starship
Mm-hmm.
with a creature that is probably indestructible. And like, what do you do? Like you're in space.
Oh my God.
Yeah, like you're trapped with this thing that can hunt you down and you can't kill it. What do you possibly do?
Mm-hmm. And then did they just run away? I need to watch that movie. I was like the only one I didn't watch from James Cameron. I love James Cameron movies.
Yeah, oh yeah, me too.
He's really good at like even in Terminator, he was really good at making Terminator so like hor terrifying, I'd say. Not
Yeah.
scary, but like terrifying. Like you don't want him near you because you feel like he's gonna kill you, you know?
Yeah, I mean that's what one of the favorite lines in there, in the first one was like, he never sleeps, he never eats, he doesn't do anything but continue to follow you, to chase you, to
Mm-hmm.
kill you. And that's terrifying, right? Like you can't even go to sleep.
Mm-hmm. Do you like incorporate those elements in your writing as well?
Oh yeah, I mean anybody that tell like I don't think a writer can write anything completely unique. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
it has to be based on all the experiences you've taken in. I include movies and TV and comic and books and all that stuff is part of that. Whether it's good or bad, you're influenced by it. And so yeah, Daniel and I, the artists on the books that I normally do, like we love old horror films. And so we incorporate a lot of that stuff in there on purpose. Like we love that kind of stuff. And so
Mm.
we might take a shot, I mean, the classic shining shot of the two, twins at the end of the hall. We use that in vinyl. So
Mm.
like we love to incorporate that kind of stuff because we think it still stands the test of time.
How did you meet Daniel, your illustrator?
That's, it's just a weird, like, because he's an Englishman who lives in Spain. So it's not like we met.
What?
Yeah, yeah, we didn't meet in America. So he had sent samples to Kevin Gardner and Brian Stelfreeze at the time. And Brian
Mm.
Stelfreeze and I shared a studio together. And Brian just walked in one day and had printed it out and said, hey, I think you should check this guy out. He seems like he's pretty decent. And so I reached out to Daniel. I liked his work. We started working together. And then you find out, like, sometimes, there's just people and you fit. your peas and same peas in the pot, and we found out we're very similar in the way we like to do things, and we just get
Hmm.
along really well. And so we've worked together ever since.
Hmm.
It's just
Have you ever
him.
worked?
Okay,
Have
sorry.
no, no worries. Have you ever worked with someone where you were like, oh, we just don't, we're not compatible at all?
Oh yeah, that happens. That's at least 50% of the time. Yeah, unfortunately. I mean, and I don't think it's necessarily bad or good. Nobody's right or wrong. It's
Mm.
just that sometimes you just don't get along with certain people as far as a storytelling sense. And it's I'm sure if you and I sat down and started talking about the movies we love, I
Uh,
bet you there's at least one movie that I love that you hate, and vice versa.
should we try
I mean, it just depends on how long you want to go.
it?
Because it's like even but I don't think that's a right or wrong, right? It's not a right or wrong
Mm.
answer. I mean, we could sit here and argue about, whether the first Star Wars film is great or not.
Yeah.
I know some people don't like it, because it's too slow or whatever. But you can't argue the impact of that movie. That movie is clearly successful. Like whether you love it or hate it, it's successful.
Hmm.
So there's no right or wrong answer to that.
I feel like it's all about preferences
Hmm.
a lot of the times, right?
Yep.
Because okay, when you were saying that you have like people that you really can't be compatible with, I felt that really strongly when my colorist was busy for like a long time, so I had to find someone else, and they just didn't. They were good, but they changed like the complete aesthetic of my story.
Hmm.
I'm like, this isn't an action. Why is it suddenly like drawing with like dark black cell shading? I need it softer. It's a
Hmm.
drama, you
Yeah.
know? And I ended
That
up
makes
just,
perfect sense.
hmm I ended up like literally just like going back to the artist because it took too long to find someone. I was like, oh, well, you're available again. Please work for me, you know?
Yeah.
And I was coloring while I was waiting. So,
No, I mean that happens a lot. I mean, I don't think, and like I said, I'm not trying to say like if there's a bad, anybody's a bad person because of it or any of those kind of things.
mhm.
Like you have a certain vision, especially being a writer, I have a certain vision of how I want things to turn out. And so you want to make sure you're putting the right creative team together so that kind of like that vision comes at least close to what I want versus, I don't want I don't want my comic to look like Scott Pilgrim, but I love Scott Pilgrim. Like
Yeah.
it's an amazing book, but that's not my aesthetic.
Hmm.
So if I hired them, that would be a misstep on my part. But I'm like, oh yeah, this isn't going to work. Not saying it couldn't work, but that wouldn't be the way I'd initially see it.
Hmm. Do you always consume like mostly dark comedy?
Do I
Yeah.
consume? Oh no, I consume everything. Like I love so much across the board. Like, I mean, TV, film, books, comics, it doesn't matter. Like if I think it's good and it's something different, I'm gonna love it. Like now dark comedy I do love, but it's not anywhere near close to just the only thing I consume. Like I've always been a huge science fiction fan, so any science fiction stuff I just dive into big time.
Yeah, me
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites. So
That's
yeah,
like that's why I feel like all the movies I like are so all over the place
yeah,
sometimes.
same. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's it. You should have a variety of tastes,
Mhm.
especially as a creator.
So why do you think you're like lean towards that specific genre when you write?
Um, Honestly, it's because like Daniel and I love it.
Hmm.
And when we first tried it with plastic and it was successful, we said, hey, let's keep doing this and until we're tired of it. Um, and this, like for creators, a lot of times it's tough for you to build a career on doing multiple different genres, right? Like so
Yeah.
you don't know a lot of creators that do science fiction, fantasy, romance, and horror. It's very rare that
Yeah.
you find, usually everybody's known for kind of one thing. And so once we found that one thing for us, we just kind of leaned into it and we love it. So
Hmm.
we just keep pursuing it.
Do you think you'll ever write something in a different genre?
Oh yeah, for sure. I've got too many ideas not to.
Like
So,
which genres? Which genres?
I will always want to do something in science fiction, which is tougher to, I think, to pull off in comics. But at some point, I want to write some cool science fiction stories.
Why do you think it's tougher?
Um, Visually science fiction, if you think about movies and stuff, it's usually pretty big, right? Like there's a lot of moving parts to that and spaceships and space battles, and it's very exciting and very fluid and very there's a lot of motion involved.
Yeah.
So I think with comics being static images, it's really tough to pull off a good science fiction comic.
Mm. You know what? I agree with that to an extent because I feel like science fiction, like Star Wars, Star Wars is borderline fantasy though because they have a whole different like species. Same with Star Trek, but science fiction like Terminator is
Hmm.
grounded in real life, right? It's like real life, but what if time travel? So there's not that much world building that's necessary for
Right.
science fiction. So I feel like, I mean, my comic, I have a little poster here of it, is science
Hmm.
fiction, and I think it wasn't that actually I kind of made it easy on purpose because it's my first ever comic, but
Hmm.
I feel like it wasn't that difficult to do science fiction because I could have just like used my environment as an example because it's grounded in reality and it's like a time travel thing. So there wasn't much insane visuals necessary to tell the story.
Right. That and I think you're 100% right. Like I think Saga, I think we could argue Saga is probably science fiction and fantasy.
Mhm.
And it's been highly successful, but it's
Yeah.
hard to name a lot of other comic books, even like when you start thinking about like Guardians of the Galaxy that was always set in space and Silver Surfer and that kind of stuff. Those things have never been huge, movie wise, yes, but like
Yeah.
comic they've never been like massive hits.
Really?
Yeah, I mean they've done well obviously because they're still around, but like
Yeah.
nothing like Avengers or X-Men or Wolverine or Batman or Superman,
Oh yeah.
you know.
Hmm. But I feel like they have to be big to be on the movie. So I was like, oh, how did they get to the movies if they weren't that popular?
No, I don't think this. Yeah, I mean, Guardians of the Galaxy was never like a monster hit. So
Hmm.
I think they just went, hey, here, James Gunn went, hey, this is what I want to play with, and he had a good idea for it, and he turned it into something, that was big. I mean, that happens fairly
Yeah.
often, with comics.
I feel like a lot of stories and movies, they're based off of comics, and that's because comics to me, to an extent, sometimes feels like testing the audience,
Hmm.
right?
Oh
And then be
yeah,
like, oh, is this worth investing in? And then the TV shows, like as executives and Hollywood executives, look at the comics and think, okay, this is popular enough to turn into a movie, or this is
right.
popular enough to turn into a TV show, you know?
And
So,
sometimes just that it's a good idea,
mhm,
like a Department of Truth is not necessarily like, that's not necessarily James' biggest comic, but I know, from some of the inside information, like the studios went nuts for Department of Truth. And so they gave him a truckload of money for the option. So I think
mhm,
it's more like ideas. These ideas are already fleshed out. So like even look at your comic, like you can show them to it. And it's almost like it's storyboards, right? You go,
mhm.
here's proof of concept. Here's the story. You don't have
Yeah,
to do a lot of work. Like I've already done all the work for you. So I think,
yeah, exactly.
yeah, it's like, hey, now you just have to shoot it.
Would you ever want to turn your comic into like a film?
Oh yeah, I mean, obviously, TV and film, all that kind of stuff. I think I lean more towards I'd say old school was like movie. For me now, I'd rather see stuff like 8 episode, hour long Netflix series or something like that because that's what I personally like. So I like
Mhm,
stuff like Fargo and Wednesday, the TV show, I thought was fantastic, stuff like that.
mhm.
I think that's the future. Movie theaters are struggling a little bit. So, but yeah, obviously a film or TV show would be fantastic.
I think it's struggling because the pandemic hit and then a lot of people stopped going to
Yep.
theaters.
Yep. And just never went back. And I think it's even more expensive than ever. The last time I went, I think a ticket was $25.
Oh
you
my
know,
God.
and that's
I'm not
that
going anymore.
and that's without popcorn and a soda, like that's
Mhm.
just to get in the door. So yeah, it's a tough one.
Yeah. If you had to choose, which story of yours would you want to turn into a TV show?
Hmm, that's a tough one. I mean, obviously I'd lean towards, like plastic or vinyl or plush, but all three of those I think would be like a really interesting TV show,
Hmm.
like spread over, because just they're all kind of similar as far as themes and that kind of stuff. Vinyl's a lot more violent, so I don't know how studios would respond to that. But yeah, plastic or plush would be hilarious as a TV show.
Do you think it'll be rated like, was it, or not R18, but like mature, 18
Oh
plus?
yeah, for sure. Yeah, they would definitely be mature.
I feel like it'd be the same category as like The Boys. But
Yeah.
The Boys
Oh
is
yeah.
insane. Is
Oh
next
yeah.
insane. So, like, did you watch the show?
I'm not currently caught up, but yeah, I watched the first two seasons.
First the season? Okay. I wonder if you watched the Hero Gasm episode because that one was
Hmm.
insane.
Yeah. Yeah,
My God.
the boys is on a whole nother level. That's some, yeah. So yeah, but I don't know if they'd be quite that mature, but it definitely, just because of the violence and stuff that would be in them. You can't cut people's heads off and put them in baggies and it not be labeled mature.
But I like violent scenes in movies to be honest. I always write them. There's always one insane one, and I try to minimize it so that the impact of that one insane one is strong, you
Oh
know?
yeah, that's smart. Yeah.
And people always tell me like, "Oh, why do you have to have so many scenes of showing that grotesque scene?" I'm like, because it happens once and it has to be like impactful. Like you need to be like, you know?
Yeah.
You can't just let it flash by you and then never see it again.
Oh
So,
no, I mean that's what we try to do, right? As creators, we try to influence your emotions. And so,
mhm.
we want you to be squeamish or upset or sick to your stomach at some points, and other times we want you laughing about
So you found out you wanted to be a comic creator at 17, which is like way sooner than like 90% of people, to be honest.
it.
So did you decide like to go to school or did you just never go to school and just straight up just started publishing comics?
Back then it was, I mean, I just started writing pitches and sending them to every comic company that would I could.
Hmm.
And so I didn't go to school. There wasn't a lot, and there still isn't a lot of schools that have anything that's focused on comics. You can go
Hmm.
for screenwriting and those kind of things. And even then, there's not a ton of those around. And
Hmm.
so for me, I never even thought about like going to school for writing. I did go to school 4 times, but but all four, yeah, I know. But
What?
but they weren't for writing. So I got a degree in accounting and I got a degree in information technology. Yeah,
Why?
you know, backup plans, which are always a horrible idea. But yeah,
Why do you
when
think
go ahead.
why do you think they're a horrible idea?
I think having a backup plan is always easier than your main plan. Plan B is always so for some reason is always easier. Like, I mean, and you know this, like trying to break into the writing field or any creative field, honestly, whether that's music, film, TV, comics, books, no matter what it is
Hmm.
is a very difficult task, and your odds are very low. Becoming an accountant is very easy. You go to school, you get a degree, you apply for accounting jobs, and you count numbers. It's very easy in comparison. So I think that's, in my head back in those days, I was like, oh, I'm not sure this writing thing's going to work out. Let's make sure I have a plan in case it doesn't. Um, and so, those were easier to paths to follow than, I mean, you can go to school and get a writing degree. It doesn't mean you're going to be a professional writer.
So did you ever like study like anything like online, learn how to
Oh,
write?
oh yeah. I mean, constantly read books, constantly looked up stuff, and read comics, probably the same as you do. Like I'll watch a TV show once for fun,
Mhm.
and then I'll go back and watch it from a writer's perspective and try
I
to,
do that.
yep, and try to dissect what they did and learn from what they did and how they did it and why they did it. So I think that's where our learning is we have to go out and read and find all the information we can and watch as much stuff as we possibly can, um, to learn how to possibly have any chance of doing this.
So, which show or movie did you do that for and you felt like you learned the most from?
Ooh, there's been a couple over the years. I'd say the ones that have probably had like a really large impact on me lately,
Hmm.
let's go with the newer stuff. The first season of True Detective, I think is still one of the most magnificent single seasons of a TV show ever.
Mm.
Um, the first season of Stranger Things, I think, is just about perfect. And the first season of Wednesday. And so, like,
Really?
going through and yeah, yeah. And so I go through those and I kind of dissect them and learn from them. Um, have you seen the first season of True Detective?
I didn't watch True Detective, but I did watch Wednesday and I also watched Stranger Things. What's
Yeah.
a True Detective about?
True Detective is it's Woody Harrelson and oh God, who's the guy that's all right, all right, all right? Matthew. Anyway, there's two great
McConaughey?
actors in it. Yeah,
McConaughey?
Matthew McConaughey, perfect. They're detectives and they're
Uh-huh.
kind of like very different personalities, and they're chasing a serial killer.
Okay.
And it's one of the first times I ever watched a TV show where you could tell nothing in it is done by accident. The name of the bar they go to, what they order to eat, everything has a reason. And it's the most well thought out TV show I think I've ever watched from like beginning to end. And it's like, I think it's like 8 to 10 episodes,
Hmm.
but everything in it has meaning. And that was the first time I'd seen somebody like put that much thought into every single thing they put in on screen.
Hmm. Do you remember what that thing they ordered in the bar thing? Do you
Oh, I
remember
don't
what?
remember the exact order of the bar, but I remember that the bar was called Fox and Hound,
Uh-huh.
and that represented the two characters.
That's what I was thinking when you said
Yeah.
that.
And then when you see that, and then you go back and watch some of the earlier episodes before they go to this bar, you realize, oh, like from the very beginning, they're telling you one of them's basically a bloodhound, and the other one's like this clever little fox.
Hmm.
And you're like, oh yeah, everything was thought out through this entire show. Like they put a lot of thought into it. And so those kind of things, like when you're watching it, I'm not sure I could ever write that well, but when you see it, you're like, oh, this is amazing. I need to study this.
Hmm. So why do you think that Stranger Things season one's so perfect?
Just the way they delivered everything, I mean, I can kind of consider it a horror show, in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I think it's the delivery of everything and how they handled the kids versus, the monsters and they made it feel believable, even though, it's somewhat ludicrous. And
Yeah.
just how, like you got this little girl running around who doesn't have a name. She's just called 11. And these kids kind of grab her and, like adopt her into their family kind of thing. And
Yeah.
it's just amazing how they delivered the information like from episode to episode. And I think they did a fantastic job of developing the characters along the way. And who you thought might be a bad guy ends up being a good guy, those kind of things. There was a lot of twists and turns in what I thought at first was just going to be kind of like a popcorn TV show that, you didn't have to do a lot of thinking about. It was the exact opposite.
Hmm. So yeah, you like stories where you have to like think a lot,
Oh
right?
yeah. Yep, I love those.
I noticed that they're all kind of psychological in a way.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's and that's my preference. You were talking about preferences earlier. Those are the ones that always speak to me. If they can make me think about things, life, being a better person, whatever that might be, right? Like
Mm.
those are the things that attract me. Don't get me wrong now. I love my like I'm gonna sit here and not think about anything while I'm watching this movie or TV show. But these are the ones that impacted me the most as a writer.
Hmm. You know what's funny? I think there's a show that I think is like the writing is really, really good and really tight, but it's not like psychological or anything I'd write at all.
Yeah. What
It's,
is it?
Seinfeld. I think
Oh yeah.
Seinfeld is really good.
Yeah. A very interesting show. And I mean, they've making fun of the fact, right? It's a show about nothing,
Hmm.
but it's so well done and so well crafted that you're right. I mean, and that's why it was such a hit is because it wasn't necessarily didn't make you, it wasn't, didn't make you think about life, but it was fun to watch and see that other people were maybe as clueless about life as we are.
And like the every dialogue they had would always push the story forward. There wasn't
Yep,
much of a
yep.
filler. And like there was like some episodes, the reason I was like thinking like why is this so engaging when there's like ba the most basic things are happening is
Hmm.
because there's like five stories happening in like one episode, but they intertwine it so that none of it is confusing and you can follow it really easily. And at the end, they always clash together, and then it's like I'm like, that's so impressive. How did they do this? on a weekly basis. I could never think up so fast, you know?
Oh no, yeah, they did an amazing job on that one. I mean, you look at all the master shows, and I'd say I think you could say the same thing about Friends or MASH, or a lot of the shows that were mega hits like that. They were good for a reason, is because they were so
Mhm.
well written.
You know, I think that's a good thing about like comics and shows and movies. The audience can decide whether if this should continue or not. Like
Hmm.
they're very brutally honest. Because if you watch a show, you're like, I don't like it. You're gonna immediately click off.
Right. Trying to turn off my heater.
And then uh I think Netflix takes a note of that.
Hmm.
Like they check how many people watch stuff for how long. And then they calculate and create a metric and be like, okay, this show is worth continuing. This one's not worth continuing, right?
Yeah. I mean, it
So
comes
it's
down.
kind of a democracy.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, it comes down to how many people watch it, right? And every time you watch it, it's a vote.
Hmm.
But if you watch the whole episode, it's a vote.
Do you prefer writing like one shots or like overarching stories, man?
Um, I prefer writing like a self-contained like 5 issue, 6 issue miniseries is kind of like my sweet spot because I like to have
Hmm.
an ending. I haven't really attempted yet writing like an ongoing that goes on for a really long time. Um, I mean, I'm not saying I wouldn't do it, but that, as you know, in comics, that's just really tough to make work, especially in the create your own field.
Yeah, because it has to all do well for it to continue, right?
Right. Yeah. You have to do well for a really long time, and doing an ongoing that does well for over years is so rare. I mean, we can probably name five of them over the past decade, and those are probably the only five. Sort of like what you got, like Saga, Spawn, Walking Dead, which I guess, well, Walking Dead's over. So,
Mhm.
but yeah, I mean, there's not a lot of them. It's really tough.
You know, Walking Dead came before, no, after, Invincible?
Oh yeah.
So Invincible is the same creator as Walking Dead, and it actually Invincible came first. And then based off of what the creator learned from Invincible, he incorporated it in The Walking Dead, and that's why apparently The Walking Dead became so successful.
Well, I know Robert. I've known Robert for a long time.
Hmm.
We were booths and stuff, and just talking to him here and there. Um, Robert did things that nobody else would even try to do, and I think that was the trick. Is like, if you listen, like, who even think about it today. If I
Hmm.
came to you and said, "Hey, I want to do a black and white comic about zombies," would you think that's a good idea?
No.
Right. Or I'm going to do my version of Superman / Spider-Man for Image Comics.
Mhm.
You're like, well, they don't do superhero comics at other companies for a reason because Marvel and DC kind of have that sewed up. Like it's going to be really tough for you to stand out. And I always give it to Robert, man. Like, I mean, he was like, no, I'm going to do these two books. And he did them. He paid for them himself sometimes when they weren't doing well, like beyond what I think most people would reasonably do. Like he kept his third shift job. He worked his butt off to make sure those comics came out, even when they weren't making money. So,
Really?
oh yeah, when I think most people, and myself included, might go, I'm not making any money on this. Maybe I should stop. Robert's like, oh no, I'm going to keep doing this book.
You know, I Robert Kirkman's kind of like one of my idols right
Oh
now.
yeah.
So I'm impressed. You're like, oh, I know Robert. I'm like, what? You said it so casually. I would be so, I'm so, that's so awesome. That's
Yeah.
cool.
Well,
What's
and
it,
I mean, oh, go ahead.
sorry. I was gonna ask, like, have you ever worked with him?
I haven't worked with him. I mean, most of the time it's just been stuff, we see each other at shows and stuff, and that's kind of how we became friends. I think one of the first time I did San Diego Comic Con, our booths
Mhm.
were side by side.
Uh-huh.
It was him and Ryan Otley and Corey Walker. The three of them were sitting in the booth next to us. And as you know, like when you're sitting at a show, you just talk to the people that are next to you. And we all kind of hit it off and became friends. And I've known Ryan and Corey and Robert ever since. And I mean, I wouldn't say like, we don't live in the same city, so it's not like we go to dinner every night or anything. But when we see each other at cons and stuff, we always catch up and say hi and that kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
Um, and he's just a regular person. He's a nice
Oh
guy.
yeah.
Yeah. He's
Do you
always been,
think sorry, keep going,
I
keep
was,
going.
I was gonna say he's always been nice to me. So
You know, my vision of him right now is kind of like a um, very ambitious, not aggressive, but like I wouldn't say aggressive. I don't know how to explain it. Forwarding man. Like he knows exactly what he wants. He won't budge from it, and he's very ambitious about it.
yeah, I mean he's again like, and this is an interesting talk, right? So like I read a lot of books, especially about like business and conventional thinking, and what
Me
you learn
too.
is conventional thinking doesn't work. Everything the world teaches you how you're supposed to do stuff is wrong. And I know that's hard to listen to, but like if you think about how everybody does, if conventional thinking works, everybody would be happy and rich.
Hmm.
That's not what happens. Like I would say almost the opposite happens, right? So the people you see that are like highly successful and rich didn't do what other people say they should have done. And so look at Robert's career, right? Like I think he's a
Yeah.
perfect example of like, yes, he's very stubborn in his ways, but he knew what he wanted the whole time. And everything he did along the way was against the rules. So he did a black and white zombie comic for 15 years, sometimes funding it himself because it wasn't making money. To the point, where like images like maybe you shouldn't do this book anymore. And Robert went, no, we're going to keep doing this book. The same thing happened with Invincible. 10 years, 10 or 15 years with that book too. And he didn't do it in the way everybody told him he was supposed to do it. When it came to like selling the rights to both TV shows, he did everything they tell you you can't do in Hollywood. So he's like, if you're going to do a Walking Dead TV show, I have to be in charge of everything. And nobody lets you do that in Hollywood. Nobody. And Robert's like, I'm not budging on this. And of course, he turned it into a highly successful TV show. Then he did the same thing with Invincible. He probably got many offers, but he was like, until Ryan and I have full control, we're not interested in talking to you. And now you see the Invincible cartoon is exactly like the comic. And so he didn't do what everybody tells you you have to do. He didn't follow those rules. He said, no, this is the way I'm going to do it. And that's a hard road to walk.
You know, I want to walk that road though.
Yeah. I mean, you have to be hard-headed and realize like, I mean, keep in mind for 15 years,
Hmm.
Robert Kirkman's books weren't doing well enough for him not to have a full-time job.
Hmm.
15 years. So keep that in mind. Like, are you willing to put out your comic every month for 15 years, even if you have to keep a full-time job and it's not making you any money? Do you believe in your concept that strongly? And that's
For
where I
now.
think I'm not saying, I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I'm just,
No, no, no. I'm
that's
trying to genuinely answer that question right now.
yeah.
For now, I'm telling myself, but I feel like I'm not gonna follow it because personally, okay, because a lot of people are saying, "Oh, you want to learn to make comics or you want to learn to make movies, you should go to school." And I specifically said no because I didn't want the school to teach me how to make movies because I wanted to be able to keep my own vision without any rules thrown upon me, if that makes any
Hmm.
sense.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
same thing with my comic. I've never took a single like drawing class in my life or anything along those lines. And I think you saw a little bit of it. That was completely just like my intuition. That's how I drew it. And based off of like other stuff that I liked, I guess, because I also read comics and stuff. But I genuinely didn't want other, because even with writing, you give a creative writing assignment to 10 different English teachers and you get 10 different, completely different grades, right?
Hmm. Yep.
Like one year, and I still remember in school, when I was in school, one year I get good grades in writing, one year I get terrible grades in writing, and I genuinely did not understand why.
Yep. Because it's all
Right.
opinion, right? Yeah.
Exactly. So I feel the same way about storytelling, and it's a form of art. That's the beauty of it. It's subjective. It's supposed to
Hmm.
be unique with for each person.
Hmm.
So I don't I want to like when I'm writing, I do have artists working for me, but I'm very picky. So I would literally to the point I'd be like, his arm is posed the wrong way. Can you make it like this? And I'd take a photo of myself posing and I'd
Yeah.
send it to him and be like, do it this pose, not like this. And it's like
Yeah.
the most minor thing ever. But that's also why I prefer quality over quantity. So I'd rather take forever to make the perfect story than like a lot of bad stories. But I do
Yeah.
understand like Robert Kirkman's like we need to publish every month. And I
Right.
respect him so much. Because that's the
Hmm.
biggest problem I have is that I need to be less of a perfectionist and actually po release more stories so that I can actually succeed.
Yeah. Well, I won't say you necessarily have to be less of a perfectionist. I think the more you do it, the better and faster you'll get at it. So
Hmm.
that's just, building up that speed, especially in the beginning. It's like writing your first comic book. Yeah, it seems like only 22 pages would be simple, but sometimes that might take you 2 months. And that's okay. But then once you get into the flow of it, you're like, oh, okay, I might be able to do one of these every 2 weeks.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's just teaching yourself that skill, to get faster and faster at it.
I hope so. I think I am. I'm doing like the second part right now, and I can definitely feel that I definitely know what I'm doing a lot more.
Oh yeah. You'll just and that goes, going back to the school thing. I don't think school for any creative field is a necessary thing. Because if you wanted to get into film, or comics, you're already doing it. If you want to get into comics, you can just start making comics. You don't need anybody's permission. You could technically do the same thing with film, or I'm sure there's somebody in your town or city, no matter where people are at, shooting indie films.
Hmm.
Volunteer and learn how to do it. Why you don't have to go to school to learn that kind of stuff.
You know, it's funny. I literally did that. I I got a documentary of myself, like a school documentary. Someone made a school documentary of me. And I befriended that person. I was like, why did you make a school documentary of me? That's so random. But I befriended that person, and people are like, oh, if you go to film school, it's good because you'll make connections. I'm like, I can just go to a film school without getting money and befriend those people on the spot, guys. Well,
Yeah,
I
I
don't have to
mean,
pay $50,000 to be there.
yeah, and I've been in schools, I've seen that kind of stuff. I taught for a while as well, creative writing courses,
Mm.
and most of the people that go to school don't actually ever end up doing the stuff in that field,
Point.
creatively. Well, I mean, they think maybe that'll give them the motivation and maybe it'll give them the connections in the direction. Um, you don't need any of that. You can go find, like you said, you can go find your people. Um, you just have to get out of the house. I think a lot of people sit and wait for something to come to them, and it's like you said, like I know for a fact they're shooting independent films in Utah. I know a person that's doing it, and it's like, hey, I've asked, can I come on set and just watch, learn? Think about all the contacts you'd make just going there and doing that for free. You've
Hmm.
got actors and lighting people and sound people and directors and writers and everything else, and you get to see how it works. That's where you're going to learn. I think
Hmm.
that's by far a better experience for being a creative than necessarily going to school. I mean, can you imagine if Lady Gaga tried to go to school for singing? Like, why? Like,
A lot of these famous people probably fail in school because
oh
they
yeah.
teach completely different things.
Yeah. I mean, when you look at a lot of these people, it's not like they went to Juilliard to become an actor, those kind
Hmm.
of things. It's like, no, they just started acting.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, I was gonna say something. Oh. Oh, I was gonna say that like, oh, I didn't just sit around. I literally went to Emerald City Con and I spoke to you and I was like, get got to know you and your crazy books. And I prefer that than just being waiting to like, I wonder who's gonna apply for my podcast, you know?
yeah. No, I mean you're doing it. That's the trick is you've got to get out of the house. And now after not only meeting you in Emerald City, now we're going to do a podcast together. Now we're
Mm.
friends, right? And so now we have
Yes.
a connection. And hey, maybe we're just friends for the rest of our lives, and that's all it ever is. And I'll be more than happy about that because I have another friend who loves comics and movies, that we can talk about that kind of stuff. But who knows, 10 years from now, I might bump into something and be like, oh, I'm not the right person for that. You should talk to Sophia.
I'm hoping for that. And I might say something about you too, Maybe my career will flourish and I'll be thinking that I need to write a story and I'm like, who could write a dark comedy? Oh,
Yeah.
Doug,
Yeah.
it could.
Or maybe it's just you need to, you're like, hey, can you tell me how you did this or why you did this? Those kind of conversations that I have with people all the time.
Mhm.
And that's where I learn the most from.
Who do you think you learned the most from, like in your career?
On a one-on-one basis, now take out writers, that I've read and those kind of things.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, probably, probably Brian Stelfreeze. He and I shared some studio space for a couple of years, and he and I had been friends for years before that. And he was just like that guy that, he and I both are a little slow when it comes to learning. And
Me
and
too.
you need to and you need to tell us bluntly. Like it doesn't help me if you just kind of like pet my ego, right? I need
Yeah.
you to tell me if something's good or bad because that's the only way I learn. And
Mhm.
Brian was one of those people that just never held back. And he'd be like, "Hey, you can't do that in a comic book. Hey, you can't, and it'd be stuff like, something as simple as, it'll sound silly to you, but like, oh, the person walks in the room and turns off and in one panel turns the lights off and turns the lights back on. Just flips the switch off and on. You can't do that in a comic in one panel,
Mhm.
right? That has to be two or three panels. And so, it was just simple stuff like that that he helped me learn. And then probably one of the biggest pieces of advice that I learned from him that I think everybody, especially creative, should achieve, try to achieve. He told me that he never wanted anybody to feel nothing about his work. He either wanted them to love it or hate it. Anything in between was a loss.
Mhm.
I think a lot of people suffer, creatives are scared about the hate part, right? And let's be honest, like let's be straight. No matter what you do in a creative field, whether that's music, film, TV, all of it, somebody's going to hate it. Somebody's going to hate it with all the energy in their being. And you have to be okay with that. But once Brian taught me that, it changed how I wrote. Like I started writing differently when he told me that because I for a long time I've been trying to write what I thought everybody else wanted to read. And I was trying to make sure that I didn't rock any boats. And
Mhm.
then obviously, as you've seen with my books, I went the exact opposite direction and went, hey, listen, you're either going
Yeah.
to love, like, there's people that are offended by the word sex doll, and they're going to hate my book just based on that. And that's okay. I have to be okay with that, you know?
Mhm.
And so, yeah, learn to like strive for more. You don't want anybody to go, I read your book and went, it was okay. That's the worst insult. I'd rather you hate it.
I'd rather, because if you hate it, they remember it, and if they love it,
Right.
they also remember it.
Right. Yep. If it's just man, you're like, I don't even remember what that story was about. Like
Hmm.
that's the worst thing you could say.
I feel like the more my comic got popular, the more the comments became extreme in a way.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean that's going to be no matter what you do. I mean, we could sit here and talk about Taylor Swift or Lady Gaga. I mean, look at those, two undeniable talents, right? Like you can't say they're not talented, but people do. People hate them. And I'm like, why would you hate Taylor Swift? Like she's never done anything bad. Like,
I know a lot of people who hate Taylor Swift.
yeah, I mean, you could say you don't like her music, but to hate her, I don't get. Like, I don't know why you would hate her. Like, she donates money to everybody.
Mhm.
She overpays all her people. I can't think of a single thing, and you can help me out here. I can't think of single thing she's ever done that I would say was evil.
You know what? I don't know enough about Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
I don't listen to Taylor Swift either.
And
So
that's
I think I definitely don't hate her, but I definitely don't. You're right, because she's mad to me right now because I don't pay attention to her, right? And then I forget about her and I don't even think about her.
right.
I do have one opinion though for a movie. It might be controversial a little bit,
Oh
but
yeah.
I
Hit me.
I hate Frozen 2
I haven't seen
specifically.
either one of the Frozen movies. I have to admit, I've never seen them. I can tell right out of the gate they don't appeal to me. So,
I
yeah.
mean, I guess we have similar tastes because they didn't appeal to me either. I watched them both. Um, the first one I was like a kid, so I didn't really have much of an opinion.
Hmm.
But um, my family hated it, and because they're like, "Oh, the twist didn't make any sense." And then I grew up and I was like, "I agree with you guys. I hate this movie." And then I grew up, and then I'm older now and I watched the second one. I'm like, this one sucks even more somehow. So I hate them most, but I also know people who love them both.
Oh yeah. I mean, they're highly successful. There's no doubt about that. I mean, people sing the songs all the time.
No, and I have to admit, I do sing them as well in the shower. And I'm like, ah, I caught myself lacking again. I'm like walking the streets and I'm like, let it go. No, not again, you know?
Uh-oh, we're getting an unexpected visitor.
Oh my God, hello, kitty cat. Do you want to be part of the podcast?
She doesn't care. She just walks in when she's ready.
I'm curious then, Doug. Do you have any shows that you like despise?
I'm not a big fan of any of the like The Bachelor, Bachelorette, Housewives, those shows I can't stand. And I can't say anything bad about them because I've never watched them. They just don't appeal to me in any way, shape, or form. Um,
You mean the dating shows?
yeah, the dating shows, a lot of the reality shows, I've never seen one of the Kardashian shows. They're just those kind of shows aren't for me, and I know this sounds weird, but they almost kind of offend me just from their concept.
Why?
What have the Kardashians done to be famous?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so and I won't lie, the Bachelor and Bachelorette just seem like a weird, like, here's one person and everybody's here trying to fight to gain their love, kinda. I mean, it's more for TV than it is for real, and that's kind of like, love is so rare and special that I feel like I don't know. For me, it's just weird.
No, I agree with you. Because you watch this, I'm like, why do you guys want this random girl so bad?
I know.
Go to a bar, you
Yeah.
know? Go, like if you go, I don't know, to like a hiking trip with strangers, you'll find someone. Go to the restaurant, you'll find a waitress. I don't know.
And for me, and my friends make fun of this,
Mm,
I don't spend a lot of time with the stuff that I hate.
mm.
Like I'll say, oh, I didn't like Skeleton Crew. But I'm not going to say I hate it or bash it on the internet or those kind of things. It's like, okay, well, I didn't like it. I'm just not going to think about it. Like I don't, there's too much other stuff for me to worry about. You know, as far as, I want to spend my energy becoming better, not worrying about what's bad.
You know what? You're not like 90% of the internet, I guess.
I know. Yes. I don't have time to sit there bashing Taylor Swift or, Lady Gaga or Star Wars or whatever might be coming along. I'm like, if you don't like it, don't go see it. Like it's that simple.
I mean, like those people, do they not realize like, you hating them is just giving them more exposure, right?
Yeah.
Like, what do you
I,
think is gonna happen? You're like, oh, you're booing them at her concert that you paid for?
yeah.
Bro, think.
Yeah. It's like makes no sense.
Like, make it make sense. Why? Why would you do that? What about,
And people that get
sorry.
upset about, like this actor was cast as that character or whatever it might be. I don't get into those things either. I'm like, hey, if you don't like it, don't go see it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know.
Now, people with strong opinions, they're also a little bit like ambitious in a way, I guess, that they try really hard,
Yeah.
put all their effort in it.
How can you love Obi-Wan Kenobi? I don't get it. And they're like they spend a lot of time and energy on that. And I'm like, I'd rather spend time on stuff I like doing.
Mm-hmm.
So
What about for like fiction movies and fiction stories?
stuff I hate,
Not, yeah, like or like pet peeves and like
pet
storytelling.
peeves. I'm not the biggest, I mean the Hallmark movies don't resonate with me. The Christmas
They're
movies,
cringe. They're
I
so.
know. Um, but then it just comes down to hey, listen, I absolutely adore Pitch Perfect, the first movie. I
Mhm.
don't like the second two.
Well,
I just don't think they captured the same story and essence that the first one did. The first one was one of those movies that I thought was pretty close to flawless as far as storytelling. And they do a lot of subtle storytelling in the first Pitch Perfect that they never duplicate in the other ones. And I didn't feel like the characters had good arcs. in the following ones. Same with John Wick. I love the first movie. Don't like any of the other ones. Yeah.
Have you ever watched the movie The Menu?
No, I haven't seen that one yet.
Okay, because that one also I don't like. And we might differ because I feel like there's like way too much metaphors
Oh
that
yeah.
the fundamental story just doesn't make sense because of it. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, I understand these are all like, like metaphors and representing things. Because I have a friend who absolutely loves it. She's like, oh, this is the best movie. I'm like, bro, what? Why did that happen? Why are they? That makes no sense. I mean, it's a metaphor for what? Because it doesn't make sense, you know? And I feel like there's a lot of movies like that. And I can't think of other things off the top of my head, but I might be just be picky. I like stuff that makes sense and has metaphors.
Well, here's an interesting one. Have you seen Poor Things?
I have not. What's it about?
I'm not going to tell you because you have to watch it.
Okay.
Because it's one of those that I can't decide whether I love it or hate it. Yeah.
Okay, what's the genre then? What's the genre?
Um, I mean, it's definitely more indie film,
Hmm.
but um, it's a cross between slice of life and like a modern version of Frankenstein. Yeah.
Slice of Life and Frankenstein?
Yeah.
Is that not like two completely different things though?
I
Like how do
know. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I can't decide whether I hate it or love it. It's one of the two, but I haven't made up my mind yet.
I
I
gotta
mean, it
watch
got
it.
nominated for an Oscar, but it's so different and so wild.
Mm.
And I mean, I've got a friend that watched it and he couldn't get through it because he got so offended during the middle of it. I don't get offended easy, but he got offended and he's like, "Yeah, this movie's garbage." And it's just so wild. I'd say check it out if you can, because like, from a writing perspective, it's one of those movies I think writers should watch.
You know which movie I think is like, in my opinion, like really, really good, I think? Have you ever watched The Truman Show?
Oh yeah.
I
I
love
mean,
that movie.
it's a great movie. Yeah.
I
Another one of
think
those
it was
like well
brilliant.
thought out, well written movies.
Hmm. And it's like they put comedy. You know when comedians play a serious role? It's
Hmm.
very impactful, right?
They're usually really good at it.
Hmm. I was like, why? Jim Carrey can make me cry? What?
Yeah. He's one of those. Robin Williams, was one of those. That, I mean, he was definitely a comedian, but man, when Robin Williams was in a serious film, he was amazing.
Yeah. Who would you say is like the best writer?
The best writer
Yeah,
in,
yourself, okay.
in the world.
In the world. Well, okay, in like the field of like recognizable names.
Yeah. Um, Man, that's a tough one. I mean, we've got a couple of really good ones right now in comics. And I think James Tynion is probably like everything that guy does right now seems to be incredible. And so he's just one of those people that I think he's an amazing writer. Um, who else out there? James is probably number one, like in comics anyway.
Why do you like him so much?
Um, I mean, I hate him because he's so good. So but I like him. I like his work so much because he's able to do stories that are vastly different from each other, but they're
Hmm.
still really good. His pacing, the way he handles psychological horror and thrillers is better than maybe anybody's doing it in comics right now. And the guy just seems like no matter what he writes, it's great. And another reason why I hate him. So,
Wait, do you have an example of the stories?
oh well, I mean, like he did Department of Truth, Something is Killing the Children. You what was it? There's one, The House on the Lake. I can't remember what the full title is. Um, so three completely different, almost genres, right? So you got Something
Hmm.
to Killing the Children, which I'd say is kind of like a Wednesday, meets Ghostbusters. And then you've
What?
got, yeah, and then you got Department of Truth, which is about a department. It's like a supernatural thing where you find out that like perception does alter reality. So like the more people believe that the earth is flat, the flatter the earth becomes. Right. So
That's
it,
so cool.
Yeah, and there's this secret department in the government called the Department of Truth that is trying to manipulate so that what people if people start believing in a conspiracy theory too much, it can have bad effects, right?
Uh-huh.
And so they're like, we got to make sure like everybody doesn't believe the world's ending tomorrow
Uh-huh.
because if
Because
everybody
then,
believes it, it'll happen.
yeah.
So, and then you got House on a Lake where it's like this group of people they're on this house out in the middle of nowhere and basically the world has ended and they're stuck in this house together. And what does that mean? Like you're stuck in this house with like six other people that you just met and like, almost like a Walking Dead kind of scenario, right? But there's no zombies. You're just
Uh-huh.
stuck out in the middle of nowhere at the end of the world. So,
That's,
three completely different stories, right?
yeah.
But he does all three of them so well. Yeah.
That's so interesting though. Now I gotta read, I want to read the, what was it? The Department of Truth sounds the
Yeah,
most
the
interesting.
Department of Truth. Yeah, that one's cool. Yeah.
Would you say that's like your favorite comic then?
Right now, I'm really enjoying Napalm Lullaby, which is by Rick Remender. It's an Image
Mhm.
comic. And it's kind of like science fiction superhero. So, and a little bit of manga mixed in. So I like, that it's very different. What else am I reading? A lot of indie books, which a lot of people haven't heard of. Melissa was at EC or Emerald City. She did Above the Clouds, and her new one is called Monster Heart, and I'm really enjoying both of those books.
Mm.
Um, who else? What else? I mean, I'm reading a bunch of stuff, but those are the two that come to mind immediately. And of course, anything James is writing, I'm picking up, so those always stay on the list.
Do you ever like look back at read back your own comic and like, oh, I could have done this better. I could have
Oh
done this
yeah,
better.
I that's that's I think that's every writer's curse, right? That's every creative's curse. Like you look at you go, oh, because I do believe this. I think every time with every keystroke on the keyboard, you become a better writer. So I think, and I'm sure you've run into this too, by the time you've gotten to, sometimes it's even by an issue. By the time you've got to the end of an issue, you're a better writer than you were when you started the issue. So the issue doesn't like you, oh, I could have done this better. So like that's a trap I think you can get stuck in as a writer too, is that you just keep rewriting the same story over and over because again, you get better every time you write. And you're like, oh,
Yeah.
well, I could have fixed that. Well, that's always a mistake. You can't go back and fix everything. You just got to move on to the next story.
hmm I agree with you, but I only have that with drawings.
Oh
With my
yeah.
writing, actually, I feel like I was the most passionate about this story when I was writing it. So now that I'm in the mindset of not writing it, I would never be as good as I was when I was passionate. That's what I tell myself. So that I never feel cringy about my old art. I'm like, nah, this is how it's truly meant to be like told because I was passionate and I had my mu depressing music on and I was crying and emotionally writing it down. Must be good. And I wrote it when I was like in like this one. Oh, this is like old. I mean, not old, like it's like been in my brain for like years.
Hmm.
And I wrote it when I was like literally 15, which I can't even imagine. It's like 6 years ago, something like that. And I'm like thinking like, wow, this dialogue's kind of cringy, but this is how it's meant to be. This is how it's meant to be told.
I mean, once it's in print, it is how it's meant to be. So you're not wrong there. And I think your mindset's healthier than mine, where I'm looking at it going, "Oh man, I'd really like to rewrite this,"
Yeah.
but it's too late at that point. Like you said, that's how it was meant to be, and you got to leave it alone.
hmm Do you feel like you prefer, okay, I might be biased and I like Image a little more, and that might be because I feel like they allow more unique stories to release than like Marvel and DC.
Oh, I totally agree with you. Like, I mean, I grew up reading Marvel and DC, but I'm definitely like an indie guy now, and I find that the more control a creator has over something, the better it is. An Image doesn't have they don't have editors that come in and tell you how to write your story, any of those kind of things. They either approve the story or they don't. And so I
hmm
think that's why you're seeing a lot more unique stuff from them, is that there's not too many cooks in the kitchen, to use gold.
Because in DC, it's like, oh, write the fifth Superman story right now, right?
Right. It's tough. I mean, how would you write it? And they won't let you. Like, even if you came up with a really unique version of Superman, I'm not sure they'd let you write it.
Mm-mm.
Like, no, this is how Superman's supposed to be. You have to write that way.
You know, this reminds me, in Japan, there's this character, like a 5-year-old kindergarten kid, and there's a show. It's about just him, living his silly little slice of life with his family and his friends, right? And every year they release a movie about these characters.
Hmm.
And the show is normal, it's not that unique. But my God, the movies are amazing. Like I would like they've impacted me so hard. There's one about so you know how 1999 turns into 2000, right?
Hmm.
Um there's these villains who don't want to grow up and go move on to the next generation because they miss their childhood. So they create this like nostalgia trancing like fall like fume or something that manipulates everybody in Japan to revert back to their childhood and get stuck in this childhood land. And all the kids are left without their parents, so they have to go save their parents. And then the main character and his friends go save their parents. But then it's so emotional because there's like a scene where the dad goes through his entire life and remembers how great his childhood was, but now like recalls how much his new family means to him now, even though he misses his old childhood and all his grandparents and stuff like that. And I was like crying and I was like, how is this stupid childhood show making me so cry so hard?
Oh, that's awesome.
And other animes did the exact same thing. Like other shows have movies every year, but it's different. They always go back to the status quo. These movies never had to go back to the status quo. And they're somehow more mature. And then I was like researching that and I find out that they had different contracts where the writers could basically do whatever they wanted. And
Hmm.
all they had to do was put like one stupid butt joke or something. That was like the contract. Like make a stupid butt joke and include the main character and the family and the friends, one way or another. And that's so vague, so they were able to do whatever they wanted.
Hmm.
And every movie was became like a legendary movie in Japan.
Yeah.
So that kind of is a good example of like creative freedom can bring like the best things ever, I
Oh
think.
yeah. No, I agree with you. I think when you have too many, I think that's what hurts Hollywood here a lot, is there's too many people involved in making decisions about story. And I mean, I think you'd have to admit that probably what, 80, 90% of the stuff that comes out isn't good.
Mm-mm.
Most of the movies don't do well. They're not good. Most of the TV shows that come out aren't good, don't do well. And I think it's because there's just too many people making decisions about it instead of just somebody. That's why Stranger Things did so well, is those two guys that created it, they were unyielding in what they wanted to do. Because they're like, oh, nobody wants to see a TV show that's set in the 80s. Nobody cares. They're like, we won't do it unless we get to do what we want to do. And yeah, you see the success of that one.
Do you notice that a lot of stories, they're when it's made by like one person, like a novel. I noticed this in webtoons, right?
Oh yeah.
Obviously.
Hmm.
So some webtoons are based off of novels. And I always felt when I was reading a webtoon, like this webtoon is really good. I find out it's made by like one creator who wrote a novel for like years and they turned that
Hmm.
into a webtoon. And then sometimes I read a webtoon like this sucks and like there's a whole creative team.
Yeah.
And I think you explained it earlier very well. It's because these stories are written for specific people, and stories that are for everyone aren't good. So when there's more than like there's when there's too many souls on one story, it becomes that story for everybody, and it doesn't become good anymore, and no one wants to read it.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think if you try to create for everybody, it's just going to fall flat. That the
Mhm.
story won't have its own soul.
And that's why we're so good, right? Because we both write like individually, alone, in our basement, in the
Yeah.
dark.
It's true.
Yeah. So, Doug, what would you say is one advice you'd give to the aspiring writers watching this right now?
Yeah. Two things. First, if you want to work professionally, like say you wanted to work for Marvel or DC or you that's the kind of gig you want. Um, Try to get 100 rejection letters in a year. the faster you get there, you're going to get rejection letters. There's no way around it. That's just part of life.
Mhm.
Get 'em out of the way. The other one, and you're already doing it. My biggest piece of advice now is like, why are you waiting for somebody to give you permission? Just start making what you want to make. Like if you want to write comics, just start writing comics. Don't
Mhm.
wait for anybody to tell you you can or can't or find somebody to pay you or whatever. Just start making comics. If you really believe in what you're doing, you'll find a way to make it happen.
That's so true. That's why I was at that convention you saw me trying to
Mhm.
learn because I couldn't wait for like people to teach me, right? Like
Yeah.
no one, people gotta realize that there's two type of people. The world either affects your life. No, the world either controls your life or you control your own life, I feel.
Yep. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You can sit back and let everything be dictated to you, or you can go out and find it.
Exactly.
Yep.
Your own master or whatever. There's a
Yep.
cool line, and I can't think of it right now, but there's a cool line out there. I know for sure. So just
Yep.
embody that. And where can our awesome listeners find your work?
Well, obviously, Amazon and Image Comics, you can go to either one of those websites and get my stuff. Any comic shop, you should be able to order through them and get my stuff. Online, you can find my stuff at shocknoggin.com,
Mm.
which is my website, or usually on Facebook or Instagram. What else am I on? Blue Sky, LinkedIn. You can find me at Doug Wagner 13. So that's where it's pretty easy to find me. I have a pretty recognizable head, so
Or you can like click in the link because I probably put a bunch of them in the description.
Yep, that'd be the easiest way.
Yeah. Well, that's a wrap for today's episode of Podcast for Fun. Thank you so much, Doug, for joining us and sharing your amazing, brilliant insights and teaching me so much. I had so much fun. Time literally passed so fast. I didn't even realize it was like over an hour. I was like, whoa. So, and to our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, smash that subscribe button, and share it with any fellow storytelling enthusiasts. And if you have any questions or topics you'd like me to explore, you can drop them in the comments or connect with me on any of my social medias at Podcast for Fun. Until next time, keep creating, keep dreaming, and we'll see you on the next episode of Podcast for Fun.